Before you publish your movie, you should consider putting in an intro and an outro. In this tutorial, we'll cover intros and outros. So I have a little movie here, just a short one. It would benefit from an intro which could have a title and a background and some transitions. And at the end, an outro which might thank the viewer for watching and offer some alternative videos that they could watch. If you're going to publish your movies to YouTube, then this is a good way to get people who watch this video to see what else you've got to offer in your movie collection. So this one's a simple intro and outro, just to show you how you might do it. So I'm going to start with some sort of background to put my titles on, introductory titles on. So in the maps and backgrounds, I've got some colours and some moving backgrounds, which are a bit distracting. So I'm just going to pick a colour. So I'm just going to pick gradient, drag that down, and then put a title over the top of it. Go to the titles and pick a title. I'm going to drag that on the top. And it's 3.2 seconds at the moment. Now you can change that and alter that. You certainly need to once you put a transition on, because the transition either side of this slide will take off half a second. So the title is at 4 seconds by default, and we're just going to call it My Melbourne. And subtitle. And in this particular type of title, I could change the colour of the subtitle by selecting a different one. And I could also, if I select that, select a different font for the different parts of the title. So I'll put them in a different font. And so you can see whichever title you pick, let's close this, you can sometimes, depending on the type of title you've selected, change the fonts. Or if you select show fonts, you can show the fonts on your computer. So these are all the system fonts that come from the Mac. So you could have one a modern font or fixed width or a web font. So you can select fonts from your computer. And again, depending on what you pick, so I can't change the size of this one. On the subtitle, can't change the size. They're fixed. I can change italics and outline, or turn the outline off, turn the italics off. And then I'm happy with that. We'll select it and just have a look what that looks like. I'm going to make that bigger so you can see a little bit more easier. So it's at 8 seconds. I'm going to take that down to 4 seconds. Actually going to make it 5 seconds, because when I put a transition in, I'll just do fade to black. And then another one, fade to black. It's now reduced that back to 4 seconds. So remember, when you add a transition, it takes a half a second off either side of the clip. You can move the title so that it doesn't immediately start. If I put it here, then as soon as that fades into that background, the title will start, or I can put it a little way in. So as the gradient comes up, then the title comes up. I've got a transition. If I want to change the transition lengths, make that 2 seconds. And it's taken an extra couple of seconds off the gradient background, so I've got to increase that back to 4. And because it's a travel video, I could put a map into this to indicate where Melbourne actually is. So I'm going to click here because that's where I want the map to go, and into maps and backgrounds, and you have some maps. Now some maps are animated, some maps are still maps or old world map, and if you've got a video where you're trying to show the travel route you've taken, you can have a map which will actually go from one country to another country, one city to another city. Now in my case, I haven't got a travel route. I just want to show where Melbourne is on the map. So I'm going to select a blue marble map and drag that in here. And by default, 3 seconds, and by default, it has San Francisco, which I don't want. So I'm going to select the place that I want to have on my map, which is Melbourne. It's Melbourne, Australia, so these are all the Melbourne airports. So select Melbourne, so that when you actually fade in from the first title slide, you can actually see where Melbourne was. In the settings for the map, which will now appear in the toolbar, if I wanted to go from Melbourne to another country, then I could pick the other country. So if I wanted to show the travel route from Melbourne to Perth, which is on the other side of Australia, Perth, Australia, it will show you the distance from Melbourne to Perth. So if you're doing a holiday video, the maps are pretty useful. Otherwise, I can't see any use for them. So I'm clicking in here and having none because I don't have any other cities. And you've got your style here. So you have the different types of maps. So if I wanted watercolour, it's going to look a bit differently, an old world. So they're the sorts of styles you can have with that map. Then you've just got to decide how long do you want that map to be on the screen. So maybe 4 seconds. Put a transition after it again. So the fade to black, I might have cross blur this time here. And increase it to make up for the transition. So you can have your title, and you've just got to decide what sort of title do you want to have. Then your map, which zooms in on the actual place that this movie is talking about. Then a transition to start your movie. What I could also have done here was put in another background. So put in the gradient again between the map and put a subtitle on here. So in this one, I didn't like that title. Maybe take the echo and replace it. So replacing it, just drag it over what's already there. And I don't want to use the subtitle at all. So in this case, I could fiddle about with the fonts, italics and colour and outlines. I've got a little thing I can do. And then on here, I drag this one on and make this one the subtitle. So the subtitle could be a guided tour. And fiddle about with the fonts and style and everything. And then put another transition between the two of them and making that bigger because it's taken out, the transition's taken out quite a bit of the title. And now I've got 2 4-second titles, a main one, then a subtitle separated by transitions. You could put images on there as well, so if you wanted to, you could put an image over the background. Let's just move this for a second and bring in a picture. I've got a picture here that I haven't imported, and I just want to drag it straight onto the timeline. So I haven't gone through the usual channels of importing it through the event and then make that a picture-in-picture. Make that a bit bigger so it's sitting in the middle, putting on a border, shadow, dissolve, put that again on top of this. It's got the same title, so now we look at the title slide, then the transition, and then a subtitle which will give you a picture as well, which is zooming in using Ken Burns because I didn't change that. So on the picture, I could have just done fit, but it actually looks okay with Ken Burns. So now it'll just be stationary. At the other end, we're going to have an outro. So I'm going to click here, put in a transition, do a cross blur, put that back to the 10 seconds it was, close enough. And then another background, so another gradient. I'm going to keep it consistent and put in the same one. And then another title. In this case, I'm going to do the scrolling credits. Put the scrolling credits on top. And you can change that to say something like, thanks for watching. And then I'm going to delete that and put something else in to indicate what they've been watching. This is the My Melbourne series. I'm just using the space bar to see what that looks like. Then have a look. And I've just got to try and get this into the right spot because I've changed it a little bit. You can have there the names of people in the movie, or as I'm doing, I'm just deleting all of these. All of these. There's quite a lot of credits that they give you there. Deleting all of that. Copying that. Pasting it. Putting it under there. And a different one to watch in the series. So these might be other videos they can watch, and I can change the fonts and the colour, like that yellow, and the size. Get the same size. And I can turn off the outline. Then have a look at that one. So an outro, and this is a pretty rough one, and it probably needs to be bigger, that. The outro is generally used to ask people to subscribe, to like, to follow you if you're doing it for social media, or if it's just your personal videos. You can give an indication about what other videos they might like to watch, thank them for watching. Have the same sort of intro and outro so that you're consistent. If I was going to be putting these videos up on YouTube, then I would have the same intro for all my videos and the same outro. So you could create one, save it as a template so you can bring them in and use them each time. Or have some notes that you have written down, the type of background you use, the title you use, the size of the font and the font colour and how many seconds and what are the transitions and how many seconds are they. So in this tutorial we had a look at how you do an introduction and a conclusion, if you like, an intro and an outro to your movies. That's all for this tutorial.